Welcome to a special New Year's edition of Crackin Backs with our very special guest, Dr. David Mehler. Today's episode isn't just a podcast, it's a wake-up call to revolutionize your life. Dr. Mehler, a visionary in health and wellness, a master of igniting the passion for health from within, endorsed by none other than Tony Robbins, is here to unravel his extraordinary journey of transformation. Get ready to be captivated by his personal story that's not just inspiring, but life-changing. But that's not all. Dr. Mehler is on a bold mission to redefine masculinity for the modern man and the femininity in women. Today, he'll expose the 3 most destructive habits holding men back and how to overcome them. This segment will challenge your perceptions and ignite a new perspective. As we step into 2024, Dr. Mehler shares his invaluable insights on setting realistic, achievable health and wellness goals. His advice? More than just tips. They're game changers for anyone looking to make his year their healthiest yet. And in our relentless race against time, how do we maintain a balance? Dr. Mehler will unveil his top strategies for sustaining health in our fast-paced world. Strategies that are practical, effective, and transformative. This is a Crackin Backs where every episode is a step toward a healthier, more empowered you. Don't just listen, transform with us. Your journey to wellness starts here and right now. Today we got Dr. David Mehler, and it's a grand welcome to have you on. I love your history. I get so excited about, I actually just got goosebumps just even thinking about what we're going to talk about today. We haven't even got started yet. But
he goosebumps really easy.
Yeah. So we got some total interest in your personal journey and all this transformation that you have been brought through. Can you just get started and share with the audience your early beginnings until now in a wonderful conversation?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's and happy holidays to everybody.
Yeah, Happy New Year.
Yeah. Happy New Year to everybody. So I'm told by my parents that my journey began when I was about 5 years old, when they would hear stories of me coaching other kids in kindergarten and nursery school and standing up to the bullies and just always helping people get out of pain and be more happy and be more joyous. So I think it started at a really young age, when most kids would say, I want to be a cowboy or an Indian or a firefighter. I think my mission was to just help people be more happy and have more joy in their life.
Oh, great. So how did you get into where you are now? I mean, that's going from 5 years old to a man on fire. That's quite the journey. And, you kind of transformed a lot that, most people find a career and they just stick into it and they stay it for the rest of your life. You have maneuvered. Where'd that come from?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So this is actually really amazing. What happened to me is that, after college, pretty much, had my father demand that I get a job right out of school. And I was selling photocopy machines in 1989. And I would wake up every single day with ulcer type sensations and symptoms. The doctor said, well, it runs in the family, so you should take these medications. Eventually you'll need surgery. And I came up with the genius idea of, I'll quit my job. And the next day I woke up and all of a sudden the ulcers were gone. So my father sat me down and he said, here's the thing. I don't want you to bounce around from job to job like I did at your age. I'd love for you to discover what you're most passionate about. And I'll do whatever it takes to support you in your passion. But your new job for the next 6 months is you get out of the house at 9 o'clock. You can come home at 5. Go discover what you love. Go discover what you're passionate about. And I wrote down a whole list of different things, such as, therapist, physical therapist, chiropractor, all these things. And I started visiting different practitioners and doctors. Mm-hmm. And every time I would go to a chiropractor's office, I saw that they were having fun. They had a giant smile on their face. The patients were leaving the office with a smile on their face. And so I started asking them, if you could start all over again, what school would you go to? And next thing you know, I went off to chiropractic school, and I became all of a sudden an A student that had an interest in something for the first time in my life. And I was totally on fire with wanting to serve people. And I got so deep into the philosophy and the science behind chiropractic, which was all about just helping a person tap into their own innate inborn wisdom and intelligence. And rather than trying to fix somebody or remove a symptom, it was more about enhancing their own capacity to do the internal healing for themselves.
Gosh, that's great. Love that stuff. And then the transition continued.
Yeah, well, so for 20 plus years, I had the privilege and the honor to serve people in Manhattan. And I found a chiropractic technique when I was graduating from school that was called network spinal analysis, which really just fit who I am from the inside out, where you have this amazing opportunity to do the least amount of intervention to create the maximum type of results. And it's all based on a very gentle touch to help the body learn how to become self-dissipative, remove its own tension and reorganize. And actually it started to delve more into the realm of consciousness. The work that I got involved with actually helps a human being evolve his consciousness. So for 20 plus years, I was doing that, and I started to develop this itch of, well, what if I could take this outside of the four walls of my office? What if I could serve this in a more intimate environment and host intimate retreats? And next thing you know, my wife and I started hosting retreats called Soul Powered, where we were helping people drop from their head into their heart. And because most people are stuck in their head, right? We've heard the famous saying by the big guy, get in your head, you're dead, or analysis paralysis. So we felt most of the problems that people have is they're trapped in their head. So let's inspire them to learn how to actually move from the sacred journey from the head into the heart. And I would work with the men in the morning, and my wife would work with the women, helping them get into their feminine flow, into their true feminine energy. And I would work with the men and light a fire under their ass and literally help them reclaim that core tribal primal energy that's been lost and forgotten, and help a man like reclaim himself in a very organic and authentic way. And that's where Man on Fire evolved, because then my wife wanted to do her own thing, and she started a company called Wild Woman in Love, helping alpha type women that have kind of relied on their career, but they've avoided being vulnerable and intimate, and because deep down they really want to soften and be in a romantic relationship. That was her journey. And then I started working with men that wanted more passion, more power, more purpose in their life. And hence Man on Fire was born 10 years ago, right around 2015.
Wow. That's freaking cool.
Let me ask you, network chiropractic, is that Donald Epstein stuff?
Yeah, he developed it in the 1980s.
And where he manipulates the meninges or CSF or cerebral spinal fluid, is that the one?
Yep, a part of it absolutely involves working with the meninges and the spinal cord itself.
I got to tell you, man, I witnessed at a Dade County Chiropractic Society meeting. I'm telling you, it must have been 35, 34 years ago. Donnie came in and he performed it, and he took one of our friends who's the most stoic, most expressionless chiropractor, and watching him writhing and laughing on the table and getting up, it changed him completely. The guy moved out of South Florida and started network chiropractic. I was fascinated. To this day, I still am in disbelief about it. But
Wow.
Good for you. Good for you.
Wow.
And can you take a side note? And I've heard of network chiropractic. I know it was the same thing. Can you explain just a little side note about how that works? Because I don't know really much about it.
Yeah, thanks for asking that. I'm going to instead just share with you my own personal experience that I had.
Perfect.
Because I'm less concerned with how it works, and I'm more concerned with outcomes that it gets. So
Okay.
I know this. In 1994, I laid down on a table of a practitioner that was doing network spinal analysis. This was about 6 months before I was graduating from chiropractic school. And it was my fifth session. The first four, I didn't feel anything, but I saw people in the office were making these weird movements like a dolphin on the table. They were making all sorts of sounds, having emotions. I came from the Bronx, so I'm like, these guys are just weird. This is whacked. Next thing you know, On my fifth session, my body starts flying around like a dolphin. I start screaming, crying, laughing, sweating uncontrollably, but it felt amazing. Like it was a catharsis.
Yeah.
And something happened, at the end of that visit where when I sat up, I had tears coming out of me and words coming out of me without thought. And I kept saying the words, thank you. And what I had
Wow.
experienced in that moment was three things. Number one, I felt the experience of gratitude. Like I remember my father bought me a car and you say, hey, thanks, Dad. But I didn't really know what gratitude was. I knew how to say thank you, but I actually felt the embodiment of gratitude. I also felt the embodiment of grace or a higher power, like an omnipresence. And when I had finally opened my eyes, the third thing that happened is I looked down at my hands, and they were the hands of a 5-year-old little boy, where I could recall where my innocence, my purity, my playful spirit was taken from me, just like many men out there, whether it was sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, something happened in your life that made you shut down and lose that purity that you see in children. One day that sparkle, that gleam in their eyes is gone. In that moment on that table, I felt that 5-year-old little boy come home. And the next words that
Wow.
came out of my mouth were, I have to learn this. I have to learn this. And I've been doing it ever since. And it's one of the main modalities that we use in our organization, Man on Fire, to actually help men get out of their heads and reclaim that passionate little boy, the purity and the innocence and playful spirit, because the fundamental cause behind all disease today is the innocence of the little
Mm.
boy or the little girl has been lost.
Oh, thank you. That was that was fantastic. I'm going to stay on that actually, because you're on a mission to bring back the masculinity in men. And I know this may be a controversial topic right now, which it shouldn't be. But you share 3 destructive habits that men make. And why do you think men are in the position they're in now? What has society done to men that we need to reclaim men back? And why are men lost?
Yeah, it's a beautiful question, and I'll do my best to bring it to something that's simplistic. Just about every problem that we have in this world could be tied down or connected to the simple answer of consciousness. And what do I mean by consciousness is I always tell people that how they see things is correct. You're always right, no matter what opinion somebody has, no matter what perspective somebody has. Hey, you're right. You're right how you see it. But not every way of seeing things resides at the same tonal frequency, resides at the same consciousness, meaning we're here to grow. We're here to become more awake, more evolved. And when you become more awake, you can see how you used to see things, and you can laugh about it, but you realize you now are higher up on the mountain where you could see more than you used to not be able to see. So the problems that we're dealing with in humanity, whether it's masculinity or whether the fact that we still have world war, really has to do with we're still trapped in the same tier of consciousness. So the game I'm after, or the game like a Tony Robbins is after, or Donnie Epstein is after, is we're here to up-level the consciousness of humanity. Otherwise, we just keep repeating. It's a hamster on the wheel, and the same problems happen over and over and over again. So that's really what's the fundamental thing that I'm doing in this world, is to help a man raise his vibration, raise his tone, raise his frequency, and become a nodal point where he's the head grandfather clock, meaning if you put 10 grandfather clocks in a room together that are inanimate objects and they're all tick-tocking at a separate pace, within 24 hours, they will all entrain to the one with the slowest rhythm, just like two women living together. One will entrain to another woman's frequency. This was developed by Hans Seeley, a scientist, where he had heart cells in a petri dish, and as they approximated each other, they started synchronizing. So we're here to make it where the culture can no longer, pull you into the toxicity of where most of humanity resides, and you grow your frequency, you grow your vibration, you grow your wavelength to a point where no longer can the culture entrain you, but instead you're pulling the culture with you. So we're after being the nodal points in all the circles that we intertwine with, where we're the leaders that are really needed right now in this world, which is a man that is fully living in his power and from his heart, as opposed to from his head, where he's using force, as opposed to authentically being in his power.
Can I ask some clarity on, or even just for the listening audience? You have 2 types of males. You have the alpha male and you have the masculine male. Do you, Well, and correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding is, we all for many years just strive to be the alpha male, to dominate, to be leaders and stuff like that. But I realized not too long ago that that's not necessarily the approach. Alpha males dominate and they tend to oppress, or, it's always a competition where the masculine male shows up in a manner that I believe you're describing here. And that is, you know, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, just for, the audience's purpose, I have a tendency to not like to discuss things where we haven't defined what we mean by certain terms. So if you use the word energy or spirituality or God or masculinity, not everyone's having the same conversation if we don't define what we mean by that. So, but for what I understood and how you described this, what I'm speaking to is what we would call an integrated male, a man that is very in touch with his feminine energy and very in touch with his masculine energy. The feminine energy is the part of us that can sense, that can feel, that can have empathy, that can have compassion, and can connect to love. Like today, I'm in a place where if I have a bug in my house, whether it's an ant or a gnat or a little microscopic bug, like I can't even kill it, right? Because I've developed my sensitivity. I have a reverence for life, a sacredness for life. But then there's also, of course, that part of me that has a primal, tribal energy where if someone was coming to hurt my family, you bet that I can't let the sensitive part of me take over in that moment. I have to do whatever it takes to protect my family.
Mhm.
The problem is that most men that connect into that primal energy, uh, they do it in a way where it's immature. It's kind of like the teenager that punches the wall and leaves a hole in his door or a hole in the wall. It's the guy that gets in the fist fights. The idea is to be able to tap into that energy where you don't project your emotions onto anything or anyone. Most men haven't learned this. And so men have a belief that's invisible to them that number one, if I were to unleash this rage or this fury, this anger inside of me, number one, I'm afraid I might kill somebody. And number two, even worse, if I were to show that part of me, people that love me would take their love away from me. So most men shut that down. They shut down that rite of passage to connect to that primal energy. And what happens later in life is they don't have the motivation, they don't have the drive, they don't have the hunger to go after life and live into their mission and their deeper purpose because they stifled that part of themselves. Maybe something happened earlier in life where they showed that part of them, but it was in an immature way. So a part of what we're after with Man on Fire is to teach a man how to reconnect with some of that primal energy, but do it in a way that's constructive. Do it in a way that further opens your heart. Don't do it in a way where you're creating fear for others or you're projecting it onto something or someone. And this is something that men need to learn because it's a core part of who we are. And it's the man that can't connect to his energy of that primal energy or the rage or the frustration or the anger. That's the man that a woman should be afraid of because that man is completely disconnected from who he is.
Mhm.
But that same man also needs to learn, how do I connect with that energy, but in a way that's constructive as opposed to creates fear for others. And that's something that I'm passionate about teaching men how to do.
It sounds like you're.
Dave,
Oh, sorry, Terry. I just want to mention. It
yeah,
sounds like
yeah.
you're expressing a metaphor that I tend to enjoy using. It's the white belt in martial arts goes around practicing and kicking everybody's ass, whereas if when you become that 10th degree black belt, you have the sense of peace and confidence and empowerment that you just flow, and you don't even have to say anything or do anything. People have that they feel it in the core of what's going on there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great analogy. And, you know, most of us were taught to push our emotions down, right? Like when a human being is developing, you have this life force, this chi, this prana, this ki, this bioenergy. And the next thing that starts to develop is your emotions, which later in life is what strengthens your immune system, but also gives you leverage to take massive action in life. And most of us didn't really develop a healthy emotional range. And mainly because when you were crying as a little boy or as a little girl, your mom or dad would say, "What's the matter? Why are you crying?" And, the father eventually, if you were in an area that it was socially inappropriate, would say, "If you don't stop crying, I'm going to X, Y, Z." And the mother would say, "Tell mommy what happened. What's the matter?" So what happens is now the child is forced into using their mind to tell you why they're feeling, why they have emotions. So imagine, you're in a restaurant with your parents, you're 6 years old, and they are asking you that question, and you say, hey, mom, hey, dad, listen, I don't know why I'm crying. I just know I'm a kid and we have emotions and we like to feel and we like to process our emotions. And if you just give me a few seconds to a few minutes, I'll be done with the emotion. Or maybe I'm also crying because dad, you held in all your tension and stress today. Or maybe mom, you're upset because dad's not paying attention to you and you don't feel that he's being present with you. Or maybe the people sitting behind me are holding a lot of tension and I'm feeling their stuff. What I do know is this. If you don't let me feel my emotions later in life, I'm going to have to go to a therapist. They're going to want to drug me up with Prozac and things of this nature. And I'm not going to develop a healthy emotional range to take leverage in my life to take massive action. So what would you like me to do? And then the parents say, oh, go ahead, sweetie, finish your emotions. So we're forced to be in the mind instead of develop the ability to just be with emotions, because most people are uncomfortable with other people's emotions. So the culture has trained us not to feel and to explain what you're feeling through your mind, which is different than an emotion. An emotion is energy. Emotion takes seconds to minutes to feel and process it. So now you have people growing up into their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s with all this bound emotion inside of them that later in life is called the stroke, the heart attack, Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis, dementia, you name it. It's just energy that never got dissipated. So I am like ridiculously passionate about helping men reclaim the ability to feel emotions again. And in doing so, it's like we're saving them from all these health challenges. In doing so, we're snapping them out of being robotic, right? The typical guy that comes to us, he achieved it all. He accomplished it all. He said, in a life that looks so full on the outside, why is it that I feel so empty on the inside? He's emotionally disassociated. He's emotionally disconnected. He's been living his life from his head. He dotted his I's. He crossed his T's. He did everything that they told me I was supposed to do to have a happy life. And yet, if I'm honest with myself, I don't like who I see in the mirror and I feel like there's a void. Something is missing. That's usually where we come in.
I'm going to step in because he had it was he Dr. Spencer had a great analogy with his favorite black belt analogy. But I'm listening to this, and to me, this is chiropractic. You go to the medical profession, and it's chasing symptoms around. Chiropractors go after the cause. And do you ever look at what you're doing now? It stemmed from your network chiropractic of looking for the cause for emotion, a cause for disease, a cause for that, and you develop into analogy of, well, I can look at disease, or I can look at everything in life, and so much of life is chasing symptoms around. I'm supposed to, as a man, I'm supposed to be sensitive. Oh no, I'm supposed to be tough. Those are symptoms instead of just getting to the root cause.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful question and awareness. And I was luckily I was taught this at a very early point in my studies with Donnie, where he told us that the symptoms are angelic messengers, they're informants. Why would we want to silence the symptom? And we were taught, by the age of 16, we probably saw 250 to 500,000 commercials related to medicine that says, hey, if you don't like what you're experiencing, don't worry, we'll make it go away. If you have a headache, we have a pill for that. If you have a stomach ache, we have a pill for that. If you're depressed, we have a pill for that. And the reality is that if you're having symptoms, it's your soul, it's your spirit trying to wake you up to inform you that something in your life must change. And so, unfortunately, most people are brought up into a world where we're taught get rid of the symptom and get back to your life as usual. And as I've learned it, the problem is you're as usual, and the symptom is the informant letting you know you can't go back to your life as usual. And so it's all about helping a person wake up in a way that's very safe for them, where they can take bold action and make decisions and take actions that they've been avoiding their entire life. So that ultimately the symptom, the ailment, the condition, the disease, we've heard the expression is the cure, meaning it's the thing that's been trying to get your attention. Most of us ignore the whisper until your soul has no choice but to break down the door. And now you have a pathology or disease that has forced you to pay attention. The question is, are you going to still try to get back to your old life that most likely contributed to where you're at today? Or are you going to look at this and understand that this was your wake up call to stop negotiating with your life and start really paying attention?
Wow, thank you. That's beautiful. I even have in my office, I've gotten away from giving people diagnoses because people get hung up on a diagnosis. They're like, what's wrong with me? And I go, well, does it, I don't take insurance. Does it really matter what the diagnosis is, or do you want to know what the cause is? I mean, oh, you have tennis elbow. Okay, but let's look at why that's irritated instead of giving you a diagnosis, because they get locked in on that. Then they go to the internet and then they want to look it up and they get down these rabbit holes. How do you empower men to become better leaders and embrace this masculine core?
Yeah, before I answer that, just to add to what you just shared, somebody, let's say back in the day, would come to my chiropractic office and they'd say, "Oh, I hurt my knee, or I hurt my back, or I hurt my shoulder." And the natural question is, "Oh, well, how did you do that?" "Oh, well, I was skiing." So then the question that I would ask is, "Well, let me ask you a question. Why do you think this happened now?
Mm.
I understand you hurt yourself
Mm,
skiing. I understand that's what you think happened, but why do you
that's
think it happened
great.
now? What is it that's going on in your life that this had to happen now to take you out of your normal
Oh.
routine to get you to actually pay attention?" Because most people, especially men, because we're stubborn, they won't pay attention until they're forced to pay attention. So that question of, well,
Mm,
why do you think it happened now, gets them thinking outside of the box. 'Cause you can't teach anybody anything. You could only inspire them to think more deeply, more profoundly. And we do that through the art of questions. So if you
mm,
wouldn't mind, take me back to the question
yes.
again that you just asked.
Oh no, that I'm going to use that because that is fantastic. What happened now? Because you're so right. How do you impact? Because men are, I feel men are lost. They're told, like I said earlier, you have to be more sensitive, or you have to be more manly. And I want a man to open the door. Yeah, I've opened the door for women before, and they've yelled at me for opening the door. I pull a chair out, they yell at me for pulling the chair out. So I'm like, oh, I guess I'm not supposed to open doors anymore, and then I get yelled at for not opening the door. So how do you empower men to become better leaders and embrace that masculine core?
Yeah, such a beautiful question. So I'm going to kind of go backwards for a moment. And
Absolutely.
I'm a big why guy. So, for example, I had a friend one time that held a door for a woman. And then she walked through and he yells back at her, "You could have said thank you." And then he used a choice word that starts with the letter B and then has something to do with when you have an itch. And so, and if we're allowed to curse on here, he called her a bitch, which I don't support, just for the record.
Well, thank you for that because I can't spell.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good.
So I said to him, I said, "Steve, let me ask you a question. Why did you hold the door for that woman?" And he said, "Well, my father, raised me with good morals and to be courteous." I'm like, "Well, did he raise you to call a woman a bitch?"
Mm.
I'm like, "Why did you really hold the door for her?" And the truth is, if he was willing to see it, is he held it so he could get a thank you. And why did he want to thank you? So he could feel good enough about himself. So he could feel worthy because he feels unworthy. So he could feel important because he feels insignificant. So I'm a big why guy of why are you doing something? So most men were trained to be good little boys, right? We don't want mommy to get upset, right? Mommy loved us with everything. We could be ugly as hell when we're babies with poop on us, vomit on us, and she's smiling at us because she has oxytocin from giving birth. So she's flooded with this love chemical. Then one day the oxytocin runs out and she's looking at you and she yells at you. And now the pleaser is born, the yes man is born, the seeking mom's approval is born because now all of a sudden this love is not unconditional. And so the man, that little boy one day then grows up to be let me do the right thing. Let me do everything I need to do to get back mommy's love because the school teacher gets mad at me, mommy gets mad at me. And they carry that into relationships, seeking invisibly, right? It's unconscious, the approval of the feminine. And they forgot who they are. And so part of what we do is we wake a man up to this reality of like, how did that happen? How did you get into this place where you've been bending yourself, pleasing, momming her, looking for her approval, becoming the yes man, the pleaser, which is really saying, please like me. And so part of the journey that we take a man through is to trade in wanting to be liked for self-respect. Because the man that respects himself has boundaries. The man that has boundaries operates in his day-to-day life much differently than the man that is still attached to things that are external to him, still externally sourcing his happiness. Oh, if I have enough money. Oh, if I have a good job. Oh, if she likes me. Oh, if she says I love you. Still attaching everything that's outside of yourself. That will never fill a man. He's going to feel empty. Ultimately, he has to reclaim his self-respect, and nobody can hand that to him. He has to claim that for himself.
Oh,
Mm.
that's fantastic. You gave us a quick snapshot of what your dad is like. What was your mom like growing up?
Well, just to take a step back, my father, when I was 5 years old, unfortunately, uh, he let his emotions get the best of him, and that's where there were moments in time where he was physically abusive towards my mom. Due to the shame and the guilt around that, he totally shut down his masculinity. He had his core energy was masculine, but because he didn't know how to control the anger or utilize it in a way that was healthy, and because he harmed my mother, he swore that part of him off. And so that's where it's almost like I grew up with two moms, right? Because you want to have a masculine and feminine energy to have a beautiful balance. Most of us men had a feminine father. When I say feminine, meaning the mask that he wore was more feminine. His core is masculine, but the outer mask is more feminine. So we didn't have role models, right? So I had a mom that did a really good job of being sad and not knowing how to source happiness, and for very good reason. She had a very tumultuous upbringing where when she turned 6 years old, her father ran off with another woman. So she was brought into the world of betrayal. I can't trust in the masculine. So it became a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I picked the perfect parents where they gave me the uniqueness of my hurts and my wounds, because ultimately I believe our journey through life is to take our greatest hurts and wounds and flip them over into gifts. So I didn't grow up with a role model, a masculine role model. I didn't grow up witnessing what it's like to treat the feminine as sacred with reverence. And so here I am, 50 years later, and I've turned all that over. And now I'm giving back the very thing that I didn't have as a kid, because I knew the pain of what it was like to not have that as a little boy. And I think that's what almost all of us are here for, is the thing that hurt you the most is the thing that you're here to heal and then help heal in others.
When did you meet your wife?
I met my wife 20 years ago. We were good friends. I used to literally go on dating sites and try to help her find the right guy until 10 years later.
Yo, I'm here.
No, neither of us knew at the time because I was a taken man. So the
Oh,
energy was very clean. But, Harry and Sally, eventually
Yeah, yeah.
these friends that care about each other immensely, for some of them, they ultimately one day realize that they're in love with each other.
That's
And
great.
so, yeah, my wife had a beautiful journey where she was told that if she wanted to attract a king, a man that really owns himself, that has a beautiful integration of his masculine and his feminine energy, that she would have to switch her name that she was being called, which was Katie, to her birth name, which was Kathleen. And what he explained to her was that Katie ran more head energy and clit energy. It kind of like a Sharon Stone, from back in the day.
Yeah.
Whereas if you embrace your birth name of Kathleen, which is more royalty, more regal, more of the queen, more of your sovereignty, you'd run more of the heart and the womb energy. And so she did a lot of work on herself for many years and started really doing the deeper internal work to heal herself. And that's what really aligned us and brought us into, synchronicity with our vibrations to attract one another.
wow.
I
So
love
she's like
stories
Mrs.
like
Man
that.
on Fire.
Mrs. Man,
That's
that's right.
that's awesome.
So let's talk about Vicaz. Can you explain a little bit more about that and what it serves?
Yeah, well, that was a long time ago. That was a previous life where in my second half of practicing chiropractic in Manhattan for over 20 years, I had opened up a wellness center. And and my wife actually had named it Vicaz at the time.
Oh, Vicaz. Okay.
And it was all just about exactly what we've been discussing, which is we wanted to kind of take it outside of the chiropractic framework, because if you say massage or chiropractic or physical therapy, people have a preconceived notion. So we just wanted to create a name. Oh, did you go to Vicaz? Right, as opposed to saying, did you go to see your chiropractor? Because we wanted to get past the cultural conditioning of the mind and help people understand, what it was really about, which was a sacred healing journey, of really moving more into their heart and living a life that's more, of more passion and more inspiring. And yes, what brought people in initially might have been symptoms, but we were able to help people really learn from their symptoms and see what is in their life was asking them to make, changes. And the classic person, getting them out of pain is the easiest thing in the world. The thing that we were most passionate about is moving them in their life where they could have a greater love for who they're seeing in the mirror.
Wow, that's awesome. All right, dude. I'm gonna go back to your door analogy where the guy held the door open for the girl and called her the itch with the scratch. Um, uh, do you think that the brilliant engineers of this world created the social media we see today based off of that? Everybody is glued to their phones, glued to the computer, and they're all seeking likes. How many people liked my photo? How many people liked my comment? How many people commented on that? Do you think and they get addicted to that instead of working on their inner self, they're working on their outer self. What's your comments about that?
I'm not 100% understanding the question. Is it possible you could reframe it?
Yes, of course I can. So why do you think the internet has become so popular? And it seems like guys are looking for likes on the internet, just like that guy was looking for that girl to say thank you. And instead of putting the phone down and looking people in the eye and having heart to heart
Yeah.
conversations.
Yeah. Okay. Beautiful question. So I'm going to probably answer it in a way that you didn't see coming. So, Maslow talked about the different human needs. Then Tony Robbins evolved that into 6 human needs that we all share as human beings. Whether you're homeless or whether you're a billionaire, we all share the same 6 human needs. And human needs actually will override even your core value structure, your ethics and your principles. So, for example, two people, when they say "I do" at the altar, for better or worse, and they're getting married, in a sacred container before God, before family and friends, they're still capable of having affairs. So, how is that possible? Well, because your human needs will supersede your value structure. So, with that said, the first 4 human needs are needs of your personality. I'll go as far as to say they're needs of what's called your identity, which is how you are wanting to be seen by others in the world. We all have an identity. Please see me as this way. Please see me as trustworthy, as honorable, as a good person that operates from a space of high integrity. And the journey in life for most people is that no matter how much you accomplish and achieve and succeed with, which is all from the personality and your identity, and you wake up one day and you go, well, I have it all, but I'm still empty. It didn't fill me. This is where Tony Robbins would teach that uh, no matter what circle of life you came from, to have true joy and true fulfillment, you have to start to feed the last 2 human needs, which is growth and contribution. And you can't fake your way into those human needs. And so a person has to evolve to truly want to grow, meaning I know I'm built for more. I know I came here for a bigger reason and purpose. And so as you begin this journey of growing, you go beyond the mind and you go into the soul, and you start to do the deeper work of why you came here, which is to be of contribution to others. Like, for example, with Man on Fire, part of our contribution is to be the gatekeeper, the guardian, and the protector of the feminine heart in a world that could be so harsh for a woman to be revealed and to show her heart to the world through all the disappointments and betrayals she's experienced. It would take a very mature man that's fully in touch with his own heart to be able to protect that woman. So to come back to your question, one of the highest human needs that people have is what's called connection. So the first need is certainty. The next one is uncertainty, which is variety. The third one is significance. Hey, look at me. I want to be noticed, stand out, feel important, feel special. And then the next need is connection and love. So we have a high degree, have a high demand for connection. And we get connection from food. We get connection from social media. And we've started to move away from intimacy. Intimacy is there's a greater level of vulnerability and depth, kind of like where we're having a real conversation, as opposed to, you see your neighbor, hey, Joe, how are you? Great. How are you? Great. Meanwhile, your kid tried to commit suicide last night. Right. So we settle for connection. And so social media, the internet, it's all about connection. It's a way of hiding. It's not a means of going deeper and being more intimate and being more vulnerable. Mm-hmm. And so a part of what we're after at Man on Fire is to help a man become more present and grow his empathy and grow his compassion and move away from connection and move more into a deeper place of being vulnerable. And then from there, the next human need starts to be the needs from the soul, which is growth and contribution. So I'm hoping that I answered your question, which is basically, as long as we're still filling those first 4 human needs, which are needs of our personality and our identity, we're going to always have this problem until someone's genuine and sincere about wanting to evolve and grow their consciousness, which you'd have to be willing to give up your identity. And if we have time, I'd love to share with you what I really mean by that, if I may.
Go.
So we'll just call him Joe for argument's sake, just to protect his privacy. This guy came to us about 8-9 years ago. He tried to commit suicide in a bathtub by cutting himself, and by the grace of God, he passed out, and he woke up, and he took it as a sign that he's not supposed to do it. So he is a multimillionaire. He is loved by his entire family. He married his high school sweetheart. He has 3 incredible daughters that are amazing students. He had every car you could think of, the summer home, the winter home, respected at church, respected at his company. Why in God's name would Joe want to kill himself? Well, it turns out that he had 19 affairs behind his wife's back, and he got caught. And now the entire way that everyone saw him, from his wife to his family, to his children, to the church, to everyone that worked with him and for him, all of a sudden that was going to be up for negotiation. Wait a second, he's not trustworthy. Wait a second, he lacks integrity. Wait a second, he's not a committed person. And so rather than face all of those people, his mind, which I like to call the pirates, because the pirates will feed you toxic thoughts. The pirates told him, hey, that's going to be too hard to face all of those people. Why don't you just take your life? And so the identity is we're still trying to protect and defend how we want to be seen by others, rather than fully surrender and show them that part of us that makes mistakes, the part of us that is flawed, the part of us that is not perfect. And most people will go through their entire life never showing you that part of them, that is different than what they projected to you their entire life. So when you ask me this question about, so why do we have this thing going on with the internet and with social media? It's the same thing. We're still trying to sell the image of who we are to others, rather than just being real. And if you ask me, that is so toxic, because you have these poor kids scrolling through social media thinking everyone's life is great. And they think they're different. Well, then what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? Nothing's wrong with you. You just don't realize that these people aren't being honest with you. And so now you have people harming themselves because they can't live up to the perfection of what social media sometimes can portray. So what's needed right now is straight talk. What's needed right now is real talk. What's needed right now is vulnerability. Men and women getting real and getting vulnerable and showing their imperfections. And that's a great starting point, as opposed to the crap that we're selling each other, that my life is great. Meanwhile, you look in the mirror, you don't like yourself. Meanwhile, you're cruel to animals, but what you sell to the public is totally different.
I have 2 questions for you, and I am loving what you're talking about here. 2 questions is, could you, just for the listening audience, list all the human needs that, because I think you went over
Sure.
deeply 2 or 3 of them, and then the other.
Yeah, so there's the need for certainty, which basically in English means I want to keep things the same. And just please understand, every need could be met in an empowering way and in a disempowering way. So
Right.
we have a need for certainty, to have a roof over our head, to have food on our plate. But you could also stay in a toxic marriage. You could stay in a job that doesn't serve you because you have a high need for certainty, right? So maybe you didn't have a lot of certainty as a kid. And so you grow up and you have a very high desire for certainty, but it could also backfire on you, right? Then you have a need for variety, uncertainty, which is, variety is the spice of life. So somebody that's meeting that in a disempowering way would cheat on their husband or cheat on their wife because, I have a high need for variety, right? So you can meet these needs in healthy ways and unhealthy ways. The next human need is significance, where you want to feel special, important, stand out, noticed. This is, again, another contributing factor to affairs, because somebody wants to feel unique and special. Oh, my husband doesn't look at me the way he used to look at me, so I'm going to go have an affair, because they have a high need for significance. I know Tony even talks about that, people that are gang leaders, or somebody that holds a gun to somebody else's head, is like, well, I feel important now, right? You didn't pay attention to me before, and you're going to pay attention to me now. I'll be as controversial as to say even terrorism, which it hides under the guise of it's connecting to God and doing God's work. It's really, this person doesn't feel significant. So they turn to murder in order, they think they're being the martyr. The reality is, they're being a murderer. So, but we all have that need. Rock stars, right? Everyone, like I wear this watch because I think it looks cool. It doesn't even work. I haven't replaced the battery for 7 years. So I'm meeting the need in a healthy way, right? But I'm not holding a gun to somebody's head. I'm just wearing a watch that doesn't fucking work. Okay. So
Oh my God.
the next need is connection and love. They're a little bit different. Connection is more on the surface, whereas love is left open for vulnerable exchange, which means greater vulnerability. Like, are you willing to let yourself be seen? Right. And then all those needs right there are the needs of your personality. Then the last two are growth and contribution. Growing for the sake of growing, not under the guise of, so I'll finally feel like I'm enough. And then as you grow to the reality of this world is hurting and it needs contribution. It needs greater acts of service, like the Dalai Lama, like the Mother Teresa's of the world, the Nelson Mandelas of the world. Like I'm here to give, to love, and to serve, which was one of the mottos at my chiropractic school. I'm here to give, love, and serve. And there's no agenda. It's clean. It's selfless. It's not about me. I could do it invisibly. I don't need people to know about it. So that's the cycle that we're afforded the opportunity to possibly go through in life, is to graduate those first 4 needs and start to put our focus more on the last 2. It's probably fair to say that less than 1% of people get there. And that's because we live in these worlds of addictions where we're addicted to a life of drama and problems, or addicted to a life of complacency. And I'm here to snap people out of that coma, that comfort coma, wake them up, especially men, to the reality that deep down there's a leader inside of them that's been waiting to be birthed and born and fed, and give him the fire and give him the fuel to really come back to who he is at his core.
Ooh, I love it. So Dave, it's funny. I've been watching a trend of people becoming more authentic on their Instagram posts, Facebook, whatever it might be. When we're promoting our podcast or whatever, I'll notice things pop up, and people will purge and be real and cry and be hysterical, but yet it's kind of interesting. I love your feeling on they're doing that for likes. They're still doing that for acceptance, even though they're expressing a emotion that's not something that you would typically see. Do you have any comment about that?
Well, the only comment I have about that is that, I'm not a fan of like generalizing. So I would have to know specifically who we might be speaking about. I'm also not a fan of casting judgment on anybody else. People are at where they're at.
Yeah.
What you and I, the three of us, can do is, all we could do is be as authentic as we know how to be and model that for others. And so I couldn't really make any comments on that other than to say I know who I am at this stage of my life. I know why I'm here, and that's my role, is to take care of what I can take care of, which is myself. And if that inspires and motivates others to live a life with greater authenticity, then job well done.
I got to commend you. You do 2 things really extraordinarily well. One, you ask clearly to decipher some of the commentary that we share with you so you can interpret it in the best way possible. You don't just answer off the cuff, but you make it very, very specific. So I really appreciate that. We may ask a question, and it's up. Even the question is up for interpretation before you answer. So thank you for that. And number 2 is, man, you're extraordinary at not judging character in a general sense. Thank you for that too. That's special. And those are 2 things that we should really absolutely take away from our conversation. With that said, we're starting this new year, and we're really looking forward for you to launch this sense that you're sharing. Do you have any advice for the listeners, on what, about setting and achieving any health and wellness? That could be mentally, emotionally, whatever you would like to share.
Well, first, thank you for seeing me. It was one of my dad's best qualities of, I really never saw him judge another person or speak poorly about somebody else. So I'm happy to hear that a lot of that has rubbed off on me. So thank you for acknowledging and seeing me. As far as the listeners go, I would say, we've heard the quote that success leaves clues. And if there's truly something that you want more of in your life, my suggestion would be to go seek out somebody who is already mastering that. So whether it's health, like you have the medical medium out there who's delivering incredible information about helping people heal, amazing chiropractors out there. I'm a fan at this juncture of my life of following people that are living what they're speaking about. There's a lot of gifted people that have a lot of information to deliver. And then sadly, there's probably fewer that are living what they're speaking about. So I would say to the listener, if you have something in your life that you're seeking, whether it's more health, whether it's more financial freedom, whether it's you just want to have more intimacy and love in your marriage, to go find those that are not just teaching it, but are actually living it, and go invest your time in those communities where you could be soaking up the vibration from the leader down. And that would be a great starting point for anybody.
Oh, you're definitely a special guy. I appreciate that. So you know what? We're gonna end, but before we end, we're gonna switch gears into a portion of our segment that we absolutely love, and it's called the rapid fire questions. Rapid fire questions are just arbitrary. We look for brief answers, and some of it has nothing to do with all that we talked about, but it's stuff that may be personal, not personal, deeply personal, but fun personal.
Okay. Well, the answer to the first question is yes, and the second one is 72. Are we good?
We're good.
Now.
Well, now, what the hell is 72?
He said yes, so let's fit the question to the yes.
And then we'll ask what the significance of 72.
You want to have me back as a guest again? Okay. Graded myself out of 100. I give myself a 72.
We've done over 130 or 50 shows, and that's the first time somebody's ever given an answer before the questions.
And I love C students, so 72, man, you're back.
Yeah. That's great.
That's like Rodney Dangerfield in Back to School. He said, A, B, C, you're in the top 3.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I actually, when I think of Rodney Dangerfield, I like when he would turn to a woman and say, "Hey, call me when you're done with class, or you have no class," or something like that. Oh man! All right, so I don't even know if these rapid fire are gonna gain any traction here, but here we go. Question number 1: What do you think a book that everyone should read or start off their year with, men and women?
One of the first books that spoke to me about 20 years ago, Seed of the Soul by Gary Zukov.
Very good. All right.
I like
because of its simplicity. In the world of spirituality, it's so easy to get lost with concepts. I just love that it was kept very simple.
Oh, I love that.
Beautiful. Question number 2: What is your favorite activity that lights you up?
I love spending time with my wife. I love snowboarding, and I love watching football, which helps me connect to my sadness and my rage because I'm a New York Jet fan.
All right. I have to elaborate on that because we're in a football pool, David, and we picked the Jets, and I looked at them, I go, they're playing Washington, which also is terrible. I had to go with Washington because the Jets don't have a quarterback. I'm like, they've lost everybody. And I'm like, oh, that poor team, that poor coach has lost everybody.
Yeah, they've taught me the art of suffering.
Totally.
Well, David's gonna love me for this because the intern that I have, he was an intern who became a chiropractor, and he is one of my favorite. And he has a background in athletic training with the New York Jets.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah.
So he's a special guy too.
I'm seeking to buy the jets
Yeah.
because I want to help change the organization culturally.
From the top down.
There you go.
I agree.
There you go.
Thank you for sharing that. Question number 3. You travel a lot and to different time zones. What is the one thing you always have with you to keep you healthy and centered?
Well, 2 things I want to share about that question. Number 1 is no matter where I'm at in the world, I have an obsession with staying on East Coast time. So even though I live in California, I'm up at 4, which would be 7 a.m. Eastern, right, New York. But what do I have no matter where I go? My wife and I travel with greens or green powders. And no matter where we go, we order celery. It's the first thing that we drink in the morning after lemon water. So we always take our health elixirs with us, whether it's powders or whether it's drops. There's a beautiful company called Vimergy. I don't get anything. I'm not affiliated with them, but Vimergy, very clean product where we take a lot of their stuff. So no matter where we go, we take our supplements.
Thank you. In fact,
Awesome.
I'm going to look them up after. I love that. I love that.
There's something else I take. Hold on. Let me show you.
Yeah.
This guy's fantastic.
Isn't he great?
I take this. I take this this Q-Link. You've heard of Q-Link?
No. What is
You can go on. I'm not affiliated with them either, so I get nothing by telling you guys this. But it protects you from EMF, right?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
So wherever I travel, I should have even worn it today. I just, I didn't want you guys thinking I'm in the military because it looks like a military one. But
dog tag. Yeah.
yeah, it's just like, we're exposed to a lot of EMF. So I swear by these things.
What's it called? A Q-Link?
Q-Link.
Yeah, you can look them up, I think, under Clarus, CLARUS.com or Q-Link. You get anywhere from $50 up to $400. They have different ones. They all work the same.
Oh, cool.
My girlfriend's been telling me to get that kind of protection.
Well, I wonder why.
Okay,
Yeah.
moving on. Back on to David. Question number 4. What is a crazy travel story that stands out and still makes you laugh?
Well,
he's already laughing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is the last time that I ever delved into the world of psychotropics in 1994 in Jamaica. I had this brilliant idea to dive off of a cliff because there was an audience, and it was the last time that I ever put marijuana to my lips was 1994.
I need to hear more.
There's more to this. Everything they told us not to do on that trip, we did. We rented motorcycles and went up into the mountains where we were told not to go because there's drug lords up there. And next thing you know, we're surrounded by a pack of men with machetes, and by the grace of God, we got out of there. So that's a great story that we don't have time for.
I take it there was water underneath that cliff.
There was water. It wasn't one like one of those Bugs Bunny things where you dive into just a cup of a glass of water. But yes, there was water, but when I hit, it felt like concrete. It felt like somebody, the clay shovelers, clay shovels.
Yeah.
It felt like someone hit me in the back of the neck with a shovel. I mean, I did not know how to dive. I knew how to be a moron. So
Dave, this is not one of the questions, but were you naked when you dove off that cliff?
Just vulnerably exposed to my stupidity, but I had a bathing suit on.
Fantastic. Oh
Hey,
my
wait. That is, you are, just because of that, you are going to be invited to podcast number 2, and we're going to talk about that story.
Okay. And I was told on the dive that I did, out of 100, it was a 72. Just to bring it full circle.
That was brilliant. That that's true comedian material, is when you could bring something from what we talked about earlier right back in as a punchline.
So those are the Seinfeld episodes, right? They taught you how to connect it all together.
Yeah, brilliant.
Last question before we sign off here. With the world in a little state of chaos and financial uncertainty, is there a business tip or a habit that you can share to get 2024 started on the right foot for people?
Yeah. The tip that I have it's not a business tip.
Mm.
It's if you could practice something for the rest of your life that will change your life, it would be forgiveness of yourself, to have empathy and compassion for yourself, to recognize that in ways that you showed up where you hurt other people, that was just a part of you that was an adaptive compensatory strategy that you developed as a little boy or a little girl when you were scared, when you didn't have safety, and you carried those patterns into your adulthood. And you, rather than judging yourself for that, you want to thank those parts of you for protecting you, and you want to practice the art of forgiving yourself. And in doing so, you become more available to others. In doing so, you can have more empathy and more compassion and more love for other people. But it starts with how you have that for yourself.
Oh, you know, I gotta tell you, man, that when you that's the kind of stuff that chokes me up. I absolutely love and appreciate you. You are a fountain of health and happiness for people that not only need you